other testing. So, coming around, yet again, they were concerned that the Soviets had this technology already. And then jumping ahead a number of years when they invaded Iraq, that the Soviets moved into Iraq, this on CNN News, regular news, came in and were taking out all the information on scalar weapons, which I thought kind of fascinating. And that was mainstream news media. Briefly, short mentions of it, and then it quietly disappeared very fast. So the question is, who? Was it somebody in Arabia that orchestrated this whole entire thing? It was something to deal in let's say, in the space program, in the old Star Wars program. Because the interesting aspect of all this stuff is, contrary to what others say, that there's very little energy needed to do this kind of thing.
Oh, so there's very little energy needed to do this.
Please note that in 1900, Nikola Tesla also blew up the Colorado Springs power station at a distance of 25 miles. Documented. And he prayed to them that we'll send engineers to you to repair the substation to supply us power again. So that's extremely well documented. And yet again, going back in history in New York, Tesla had a small device that would create major earthquakes in that city with a handheld device that when the police entered his apartment, found that Tesla was trying to dislodge the thing with a sledgehammer. Fact. Documented in history.
Okay, so let's take that question of who. Mm-hmm. Which is sort of lodged with the question of cui bono, who benefits, okay, mm-hmm. in a certain way, and put that on hold, and we'll come back and address that question. But let's go back to the science here. That's sort of the political science of it,
right?
and let's go back to the science here, mm-hmm. and discover more of the anomalies at the World Trade Center that can begin to uncover the cui bono.
Okay, if we look further down that page at figures. 35 and 36 are what happened to the water around the boat. The water was getting levitated, and then it seems like the water was getting pulled into smaller and smaller bits until it looks like foam. And then looking at the videos in figure 37 and 39, there's still shots on either side in figure 38 and 40. But the one in the middle keeps replaying over and over again, showing the tower turning into dust. It's like, I call it the Alka-Seltzer effect. It just foams out. Completely turns to dust, like the molecules get pulled apart further and further. And very few solid pieces hit the ground.
Now, would you say, looking at this, and this again is Figure 39 on page 1 of the article, Anomalies at the World Trade Center and the Hutchison Effect. And here, it's the Alka-Seltzer effect. Now, let me ask a question. Do you think that the entire mass of the building is contained within that dust cloud? Or has the mass of the building disappeared into those nanoparticles you were talking about?
I think the dust is breaking down. Some breaks down faster than others, but within a very short amount of time. And if folks look from my homepage, mm-hmm. there's the billiard ball example, mm-hmm. which is something I did several years ago with looking at the timing effect. If you stood at the top of one of the towers and dropped a bowling ball over the edge, in a vacuum, no air resistance, it would take 9.22 seconds. So let's assume around 9.5 seconds if you had air resistance. The ground shook for 8 seconds when Tower 1 went away. In other words, there was not enough time for the building to hit the ground. And you look at this dust, and you say, okay, that didn't make a thud when it hit. So if the building, whatever is happening to it is just happening for 8 seconds, and the building's completely turned to dust, that would be consistent with the seismograph. And even NIST said in one of their meetings that the seismographic signal and the seismographic effect was sort of minor. It was not significant in order to cause damage to the understructure of Manhattan. So how can you have a 500,000-ton building slam against the ground and not cause a significant seismic effect if it turns to dust before it hits the ground?
Right. Now, NIST, of course, just for the listeners, is the National
Institute of Standards and Technology.
And you have a very important legal proceeding with NIST, correct?
Well, with NIST and their contractors,
Mm-hmm.
I brought to their attention errors in their report that they issued the fall of 2005,
Mm-hmm.
and have filed a ketam case with the contractors as to having committed fraud. If they were to find out what happened to the World Trade Center, and they're manufacturers of directed energy weapons, I think there's a conflict of interest.
Mm-hmm.
So we have sort of the fox guarding the hen house.
Right.
They should be able to recognize the effects of directed energy weapons.
You mean NIST?
They're contractors.
Oh, they're contractors.
But like SAIC
Oh, I see. Okay.
and ARA, Applied Research Associates,
Yes.
and Science Applications International Corp.
Yes. Okay.
Amongst other contractors who are responsible for looking at the remaining steel that had gone through some pretty strange bending and looked like it turned to jello.
Right.
And also there was strange effects with transmutation. If we look further down, page 1 to figure 41, that's a car lot, a few blocks from the towers, where cars sort of instantly turn to rust. Tremendous amount of rust. And actually, figure 42 is on the NIST website, where the beams are just solid rust. And how can a steel beam turn to rust instantly? Iron rusts fast. If you take an iron skillet, scrub it really clean, maybe use acetone in it, and stick it in your kitchen sink, put water in it, it's going to rust pretty quickly. But steel does not rust. Structural steel does not rust, especially the kind they now make cars out of. Now, maybe we have steel turning into iron. If it gets dissociated from the carbon and other atoms that are added to it, maybe it's now iron. So the idea of transmutation caught my attention, where I